what drove you to focus on the gender issues and challenges in the entrepreneurial world as more of a board member and advisor and investor?
Sure. I was a CEO of a tech company. I actually loved it. I often did find myself as the only female on a given stage or in a given room. And it sounds cliche, but it wasn't. Gender hadn't been something that had been a focus for me. I had mostly been in very gender, very pretty equal gender situations, whether it was in consulting or nonprofits or otherwise. And I looked up the data and saw that less than 3% of venture capital dollars were going to women. My own mom had run a venture capital fund 20 years earlier, investing in female CEOs. And the percentage of dollars going to women had actually gone down in that 20 years, despite the fact that there was much more data showing that female-led companies drive higher return on investment, exit faster, a number of other things. And so for me, I started feeling like the only way I was really going to change these numbers was to actually shift to the side of allocating capital as opposed to running an individual business, which is what led me to start ReThink Impact. I think it was that combined with, I was running a social impact business at the time, a for-profit social impact business. And I saw that impact, had a lot of benefits in the private sector. And so to me, thinking about diversity and gender in particular, coupled with businesses tackling impact, felt very interconnected and felt like a good business opportunity.
Do you find now, kind of as you've changed that mantra almost somewhat single-handedly in a sense, or along with a small group of people, now that COVID really has, impacted how people invest, especially in kind of minority founders, do you see that it's kind of dipped a little bit? So do you see that being another hurdle that we have to overcome? Or how do you think that plays out over the next 5-10 years to make sure that there still is equity in VC?
Yeah, I certainly can't take any single-handed credit for anything. We have a full team and there are a lot of others, working on this in our ecosystem, but I think we were making progress. We were starting to move the needle. I think COVID was a significant step back. It really laid bare the structural inequalities that already existed, and women's labor force participation obviously hit a 30-year low or 33-year low. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that women, whether in venture capital, whether running companies or otherwise, had to juggle increased caregiving in ways that they hadn't. They'd already always done more. I think they'd, already had 30 hours of unpaid domestic labor compared to, then so many differences. But I think the struggle during COVID made that harder. And then I think the struggle for female entrepreneurs to build relationships when they couldn't do so in person. And frankly, all diverse entrepreneurs, when people inherently went back to their own networks. And venture is pretty much a much less diverse group of people. And so there's just a natural inclination to invest in people you've invested in before when you can't be out meeting new people. And so I do think we've taken a step back during COVID. I think there is an opportunity going forward. And I actually think there is a lot of inefficient travel in the venture capital world and unnecessary things that maybe have kept certain parents and others out of venture that in the new normal might actually be able to play a role. And so I think there are actually some good things that will come out of COVID, but I think in the near term, it's set things back, certainly in terms of the numbers.
Speaking about the venture capital space, previously you mentioned that there's only 8% of partners of the 100 largest US VC firms are female, and 58 of those firms have no women partner at all. How do you think the venture capital space has changed over time from your mother's period to now? And why do you think the gender divide in venture capital has been so stubborn?
Yeah, I mean, actually, if you look at all VC firms that are 25 million or more in assets under management, 64% of them don't have a single female partner. So the numbers are really, really striking. It's even a percentage, it's a much bigger number. It has gotten better in some ways. There are more and more firms that feel pressure, who never felt pressure to add diverse partners. And I think I like to believe that that's also that they understand the data now, which is having diversity in your partnership actually leads to better returns. And so I think things are changing in that there is becoming more knowledge of the importance of having diversity in your decision-making group. That said, there is still a long ways to go. And a lot of firms are small and, are controlled by just a few people. And so it is a very hard shift to be made, and people are locked into funds for many, many years. And those that give money to funds often are reluctant to shift their dollars to new and emerging fund managers because ultimately they have their own fiduciary duty. If they're a pension fund, if they're something else, they are very reluctant to put those dollars at risk versus doing something that they feel has the track record of the past. So it's a very hard cycle to shift.
Especially women founders, they tend to get less promotional questions than kind of their male counterparts. So, and especially for our student audience. So, for a young woman who's considering starting their company, how do you kind of think about breaking into the VC world or combating some of those things that are just going to be something that they're going to face probably when they go out for funding?
Yeah, you raise a great point. For anyone who really wants to geek out on this, there is important research from Dana Kahns, who's was out of Columbia University on this topic. And her research looked at the differences between male and female founders and sort of the differences they face when raising money from venture capitalists. And she found that investors tend to ask men promotion questions like, what are the milestones you're targeting over the next year? Or what's it going to take to hit $1 billion? And women tend to get prevention questions like, how predictable are your cash flows? What are you going to do in a downturn? And so one of the things you can do as a female founder or someone who's getting those prevention questions, and I don't think it's a conscious bias, I think it happens on an unconscious level, is turn the question around, answer with a promotion answer. And, it's unsurprising, she found in her research that female founders then raised a lot less than their male counterparts. So it's not just who gets the money, but on every given round, they're getting less dollars because I think the opportunities come off as less when you've been answering a prevention question. But when women did answer a promotion type answer, they raised on average 14 times more money than they did when they did prevention type answers. So I think, yes, investors need to be conscious of the types of questions they're asking, but as an entrepreneur, you can control to some extent how you respond and have a real impact on the kinds of dollars you get.